Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
In the early 1940s, as the world burned in conflict once more, a silent tension began to grow across the Pacific. President Franklin D. Roosevelt had frozen all Japanese assets in the United States and imposed a total embargo on oil exports to Japan. Soon, Britain and the Dutch government followed the same path, cutting off Japan from nearly all of its vital oil supplies. For Japan, it was a death sentence. At that moment, the empire held only enough fuel for 3 years of peace, or a mere 18 months of war. Japan had to act, and act fast. Yet across the ocean, the American Pacific Fleet stood as an immovable wall. If Japan were to secure new oil fields, that fleet would have to be destroyed.
Diplomats still exchanged letters and smiles. Roosevelt even offered Japan's emperor a proposal, a joint effort to preserve peace in the Pacific. But time was not on Japan's side. They would not wait. Rather than risk a long and costly naval battle, the Japanese High Command chose a bolder plan, a surprise strike, one that would cripple America before it could even fight back. And so, at dawn on December 7th, 1941, the still waters of Pearl Harbor mirrored the morning sky, until the silence was broken by the distant hum of engines. At first, American soldiers thought it was a drill, but when the first torpedo struck at 7:55 a.m., the sky erupted into fire. Over 300 Japanese aircraft rained bombs upon the harbor like a storm of steel. Battleships, Arizona, Oklahoma, California, Virginia, were torn apart within minutes. On the runways, American aircraft were parked wing to wing, easy prey for the attackers. 155 U.S. planes were destroyed before they ever left the ground. Barracks burned. Men screamed for help. By the time the attack was over, 2,400 Americans were dead. Yet, amidst the smoke and ruin, 4 American aircraft carriers, the true backbone of the fleet, had miraculously escaped. Their absence that morning would change the course of the war itself. For Japan, Pearl Harbor was a stunning victory. For America, it was a call to arms. The next day, President Roosevelt stood before Congress and, with steady voice, declared, December 7th, 1941, A date which will live in infamy. From that moment, the United States was at war. And across the nation, a sleeping giant awakened. In the months that followed the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan's empire expanded with terrifying speed. Hong Kong, Malaya, the Philippines, all fell under the rising sun. By the end of 1941, Japan ruled the Pacific. But beneath this wave of victories, a storm was gathering. America, wounded but unbroken, had begun to rebuild, and vengeance was coming. Admiral Yamamoto sought to lure what remained of the American fleet into a trap near a small remote island in the Pacific. Its name was Midway. If Japan could capture it, the Pacific would be theirs. But in Hawaii, a quiet intelligence officer named Joseph Rochefort was listening. He had lived in Japan once, learned their language, their rhythm, their codes. Through fragments of intercepted messages, one code name kept returning: AF. Rochefort suspected that AF meant Midway, but few believed him. The island, they said, was too small, too unimportant. So Rochefort set a trap of his own. He sent a false, unencrypted message, reporting that Midway was running out of fresh water. Days later, Japanese transmissions confirmed it. AF is short on water. The code was broken. Midway was the target. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commanding the Pacific Fleet, seized the moment. He ordered every available ship and plane to Midway to wait for the enemy. America would meet Japan not in retreat, but in ambush. On the morning of June 4th, 1942, the ocean lay calm. Then, from the western horizon, the first wave of Japanese bombers appeared. More than 100 aircraft descending upon the tiny atoll. Their bombs tore through runways and hangars, leaving Midway burning. But the Americans were ready. From the carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, waves of U.S. planes launched into the sky. They climbed into battle, outdated, underarmed, but determined. One by one, the torpedo bombers fell, cut from the sky by faster, deadlier Japanese fighters. It seemed hopeless. And then, fate intervened. A lost squadron of American dive bombers, running low on fuel, happened to spot the Japanese fleet below. In the chaos of battle, the enemy's decks were crowded, rearming planes, refueling bombs. In the span of 4 minutes, the heavens opened. 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, were hit in rapid succession. The sea erupted in flame. Japan's naval power, once unmatched, was burning before their eyes. Only one carrier, Hiryu, remained. She struck back, fatally damaging the Yorktown, but her fate was sealed. By sunset, all 4 Japanese carriers lay beneath the Pacific waves. In a single day, Japan lost its most powerful ships, its best pilots, and the initiative. Midway was more than a battle. It was the moment the tide turned. From that day forward, Japan would fight only to defend what remained, while America, rising from the ashes of Pearl Harbor, began its relentless march across the Pacific. The balance of power had shifted, and the world was entering a new and far deadlier age. In the summer of 1939, just weeks before the world was once again consumed by war. A quiet letter arrived at the desk of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was written by a man who had fled persecution in Europe, a physicist named Albert Einstein. In the letter, Einstein warned that German scientists had split the atom, and that this discovery could lead to a weapon unlike any the world had ever seen.
At first, the warning was ignored, but then came Pearl Harbor. The war was no longer distant. It was at America's doorstep. And so, the president gave the order to begin a secret project, one that would harness the power of the atom before the enemy could. They called it the Manhattan Project. In the deserts of Los Alamos, New Mexico, a city was built from nothing, a place that didn't exist on any map. Here, under the leadership of a brilliant yet troubled scientist named J. Robert Oppenheimer, thousands of the world's greatest minds worked in silence. Refugees from Europe, Jewish scientists who had fled the Nazi regime, joined their American counterparts. They shared one goal: to create a bomb that could end the war or end the world. While battles raged in the Pacific, progress in Los Alamos quickened. Every formula, every test brought humanity closer to the moment of truth. By July 1945, after years of sleepless nights and moral doubt, the bomb was ready. They named the test Trinity. At dawn, on July 16th, deep in the desert sands, a steel tower stood alone, holding the device that would soon change history. At 5:29 a.m., the countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The desert turned to daylight. A mushroom cloud rose into the heavens, a thunder louder than any storm, and the birth of a new age. The men who witnessed it stared in awe and fear. Some cheered, others wept, and Oppenheimer whispered the words from an ancient text. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And the weapon worked. The war in Europe was over. But in the Pacific, Japan still fought on, refusing to surrender. To the men in Washington, there was only one way left: to end it. Not through invasion, but through fire. The stage was set for a decision that would forever divide humanity and leave shadows burned into stone. August 1945. After 6 long years, the world was exhausted. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and yet Japan still refused to surrender. In Washington, a single decision loomed, a decision that would end the war and change the course of history. On the morning of August 6th, a lone aircraft, the Enola Gay, took off from Tinian Island. Aboard it was a single weapon, codenamed Little Boy. Its target, the city of Hiroshima. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb bay doors opened. Seconds later, a blinding flash split the sky. In less than a heartbeat, the city vanished beneath a wave of fire and light. 70,000 lives gone in an instant. Tens of thousands more would die in the days that followed, from burns, from radiation, from the silent poison of the atom. 3 days later, another plane lifted into the air. Its target, Nagasaki. The second bomb, Fat Man. At 11:02 a.m., the hills of Nagasaki erupted in flame. Entire neighborhoods turned to ash. The war had reached its final unbearable moment. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito spoke to his nation for the first time in history. His voice, trembling, carried across the airwaves.
The enemy has used a new and most cruel bomb. Should we continue to fight, it would lead to the extinction of human civilization. And so the war was over. But peace came at a price humanity would carry forever. The atomic age had begun. In the decades that followed, nations would race to build even deadlier weapons, each one more powerful than the last. Yet in the shadows of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there still stands the outline of a man burned into a wall. A reminder, not of victory, but of the moment mankind first saw its own power and trembled. For in that silence, the world learned that the greatest danger we face is not the weapons we build, but the hearts that wield them.